This night is actually a major reason why I finally quit shooting heroin. So it was a beautiful Friday. I was still somewhat fresh into my relationship with the love of my life. A week earlier, I decided to finally quit the nasty drugs in my life and had made it 1 whole week without using. And you may wonder how I celebrated. Well, I got another bag of heroin. My partner and I were spending the day hiking through beautiful wooded areas. What I didn't predict was how far down my tolerance has gone to. I was getting progressively naughty, but wrote it off to my girl as being sick. As the night began to wind down, we decided to get a fire going on this very remote hilltop way out in the sticks to watch the stars. While we are chilling there, we noticed a truck pull up, and while we were a little curious, we continued talking and cuddling up next to our fire, thinking maybe just some kids getting high or whatever. Next thing I know, I see this man appear out of the dark on the path. He's walking along looking like he's going to a lookout area to watch the stars. As he passes, I greet him with a, "Hey, how's it going?" The guy literally just stares at us without saying a word in return and continues walking. The look on his face was borderline evil. No expression at all. Very odd, but I'm a tough guy, so screw it. He walks past a bit later and gets into his truck to drive off. Or so we thought. Now remember, I'm really faded and the nod's getting me bad at this point. I'm going in and out of some dream world and was speaking out loud what I was experiencing in said dream world, aka I was very high. My girl starts to hear something rustling around in the trees and tries to alert me, but I'm really faded at first to get what she's saying. But eventually, she gets my attention, and as soon as I heard it too, my adrenaline made me go from dopey to high alert. I grew up in the woods and I know how animals act and how they move. This clearly wasn't an animal. It was making too much noise, and when I tried to yell to scare it off, it would stop moving for a second. It felt like it was getting closer and closer, to the point where I grabbed a big log and began screaming at the woods, "Come on out, I know you're in there." As I said that, whoever that was ran wildly, crashing through branches as they went. We decided at that point it's best to get the hell out of here. What we saw as we went out still freaks me out. We saw that guy's same truck pulled down the road a ways into some trees. That creepy man tried to hide into his truck to come stalk us, and he was still out there. Needless to say, I was beyond freaked out at this point. Ran our asses out of there and didn't feel safe till we got home. I really hope he was just thinking he'd get a peek of some potential action, but with how far out we were, anything could have happened. This was a major wake-up call for me. I was incapacitated and unable to protect to the fullest the love of my life. From there out, I had a few relapses, but that was the beginning of the end. Since then, I haven't done drugs in over a decade. In high school, I had a stalker. I was 16 and we met on Facebook. He went to a school nearby and we decided to meet up for a movie. We had a great time together and ended up dating. First time he came to my parents' house, he had an ankle monitor for house arrest and wouldn't tell anyone why, and since he was a minor, we couldn't find out. My parents obviously didn't allow us to hang out, so we hung out at his house or around town at the YMCA camp. I was rebellious and naive. Things started to get weird when I noticed his family was pretty odd. One day we were having sex in his bedroom and I saw his father looking through the blinds. I screamed and called him out and his dad ran off. This stalker guy told me that his dad was just into redheads and liked to watch us, so this tells me that this wasn't the first time. I went to leave and his mom was doing crack in the kitchen, so I decided it was time to break up. This is when it got bad. He started crying and told me that he's in cancer treatment and that's why he needs me. He also says that he doesn't have long to live. Whatever, I still believed him and told him we could be friends at least. This is when the stalking started. He switched schools to my high school, but never went to class. He would just stand outside of my classroom looking inside until it was passing period. When I would leave class, he wouldn't address me. He would just follow about 10 to 15 feet behind me to my next period and stand outside the classroom again. I was too intimidated to say something to him. He was 6'4" and a heavy-set guy, so I just let it happen for weeks. It started to progress to where he would follow me home every day. He would get on the same bus as me, despite living across town, and walk 10 to 15 feet behind me all the way to my house. He would stand outside, just staring up at the window until around the time my parents got home, and then he would finally leave. Finally, I told him to fuck off and leave me alone. I told him we could no longer be friends or acquaintances and to forget about me. However, that escalated things way further. I started getting about 150 calls a night. Half of them were him screaming death threats and in detail torture methods that he wanted to do to me, and the other half were him singing me love songs that he wrote on his guitar. Every time I blocked his number, he seemed to magically just get a new one and leave more messages on that. I woke up one day to see that overnight he had left me one of those dancing, singing snowmen on my porch. He had stabbed it in the head and the knife was still sticking out. He covered it in his liquor deodorant that I had previously mentioned liking the smell of, and I noticed there was a hole where the little song recording device was. When I pressed the hand, it was not the regular Frosty the Snowman song that played. It was his voice singing eerily,
"I'm going to have you forever. I'm never going to let you be."
I was done at this point and told my parents, who contacted the school. They suspended him, but he still waited at my bus stop every day and would walk to my house with me. One day he ran at me like he was going to tackle me. When I tensed up for the impact, he stopped and hugged me. It wasn't a regular hug, it was like he was trying to crush me. I was 5'1" and about 90 pounds at the time, and he ended up cracking one of my ribs. I cried and he started crying too before running off. He left me a voicemail apologizing in a song. This one night is the night I'll never forget though, and it's the reason we got a restraining order and my dad got a gun. I woke up one evening for no reason, was just fully awake. I got up to go to my kitchen to get a glass of water to relax, and in the reflection on my fridge, I saw a movement in my backyard. I couldn't see well because it was so dark outside and so light inside, so I went to the back sliding glass door to get a better look. When I got closer, I was met with the silhouette of a 6'4" man standing just outside the door. Stalker guy was in my backyard under my room at 3 a.m. He was just staring at me. I yelled and my parents got up, but he was far gone by the time my dad went outside. There's a patio right outside my bedroom window that goes all the way to the ground, so it's possible he could have been on top of the patio, looking directly into my bedroom window before. We got a restraining order granted shortly after that, and Stalker guy dropped out of school. I haven't seen him since in person, but every 6 months-ish, he makes a new Facebook and tries to friend request me. I just block it and report it every time. I don't know what he's doing now or where he went, but I don't care to know. Three, 4 years ago, I was taking a night class back during my first year of college. I had attended a college where night classes were more common, so I took 2 night classes a week. I would have 2 early morning classes 3 times a week. One would be a lab. During the second week of my Monday night class, my professor had assigned us into groups for our finale. We had to research and create a PowerPoint with everything we learned along the way, so every 2 weeks we would get together in class to work on it. We were also allowed to meet outside of the class to work on the project as well. After getting assigned into groups, there were 4 other people in my group. We had exchanged names and such and went on our merry way. Next week, I remember this clearly because I was taking a nap and had woken up from a Facebook message. It was a guy from night class in my finale group. He had mentioned that he had a question about class, so I asked what was up. He then responded and said he figured it out, so I didn't respond. A couple minutes later, he messaged me again asking if I had the other group's member information so he can add them on Facebook. I figured he was going to make a group chat for us, but that never happened. The next meeting, we had agreed to meet outside of class since we never have enough time in class to finish talking, but when the time came, it was only him and I who came to discuss. Instead of discussing, he started talking to me about his ex. I didn't know what to do, so I gave him advice, and I just listened to him while working on the other assignments for other classes. After that, he started showing up at my study area. A couple weeks passed by and I didn't really mind him coming to talk to me when he felt like he needed to vent and advice. I was so used to it at this point, so one night in my Wednesday night class, I received a message from him. He had asked me to grab dinner with him. I had told him I couldn't because I was in class and that I had plans after class. He said,
"Come on, it's just dinner. I have no one to eat with."
I simply said, "No, I have stuff to do after class," but he wouldn't budge and kept saying that I was making excuses, saying I had plans and such because I didn't want to go out to grab dinner with them. And truthfully, I didn't want to go, but I had family in the hospital and it was my only time to go see them. After denying him, I stopped showing up to class because I was creeped out. He would always sit with me in class. He would always ask me to grab lunch and dinner with them. He would be very, very pushy even when I told him I had to study or that I had plans. After some time, he would message me and tell me he knew where my mom worked. I would ask how, and he would say he saw someone who looked like me but much older, but he was in fact correct because that was my mom. A week after he messaged me about finding where my mom worked, we had bumped into each other while my mom and I were at Cubs picking up some last minute stuff for dinner. My mom had asked who the man was and I just told her, "Just a dude from class, he really creeps me out." And she would also be pushy about dating him and giving him a chance because he was so handsome. I told her I felt uncomfortable and I didn't want to talk about it anymore. At this point, it was the end of the semester. We had about 2 weeks left and I still hadn't gone back to Monday night class. I was for sure creeped out at this point. Non-stop messages and non-stop trying to grab food together, even after I had said no multiple times. This one morning, I had walked out of my morning class and noticed his backpack on the floor by the stairs. He had been sitting there by himself, so I slowly backed away and went through the back stairway. My anxiety was so high. I walked away from campus and called my cousin to come get me because my mom had driven me to school that morning. After telling my cousin about him, I was advised to transfer and file a report, which I didn't file a report because I stopped seeing him around after I blocked him everywhere. 2 years ago, I had joined a group at a different university where we performed to a live audience. I had stopped going out to these things because I was scared of seeing him. But after some time, I figured it was safe to go since my sister and I would go together. I had also started dating someone who is currently my ex now. While we were performing at a college, I noticed a familiar face in the crowd watching me. I wasn't wearing my glasses so I couldn't really tell, but I was singing at the far right and from the corner of my eye, I could see him just staring at me. So after I got off stage, I told my lead that I didn't feel safe. I then told my sisters and my now ex-boyfriend. I was around all my friends so I felt safer than I did when I was all alone. I thought I was safe, but as I walked back into the room to grab my jacket, he started walking towards me, staring at me. So I turned around and I hate it till this day. I don't wear these heels anymore, but I tripped and surprisingly, my boyfriend was right behind me. He caught me and asked where I was going. He told me since there was someone stalking me there, I shouldn't go do stuff alone in case something happened. He pulled me to the side and covered me till the man passed by. A few months after that incident, he surprisingly applied to go to the spring retreat for the student organization I was part of. He tried adding me on Instagram, but I'm so glad I decided to not go to the retreat. It would have been a horrible 3 days of my life. I'll begin by giving a little background. At the time this happened, I was a 16-year-old female working at a chain coffee place while in high school. I am in college now, 19, 7 hours away from said place. This happened at a time in my life which I was super shy and had a tough time standing up for myself. I used to work closing shifts with my best friend after school. It would be around 3 to 10 p.m. or 5 to 10 p.m. We worked at a relatively dead store, so we spent most of our time playing music and talking. We did our duties like taking out the trash and restocking, etc. Although both of us had always dreaded taking the trash out as we had to go out back, the dumpsters were behind the store in a dimly lit area next to a sketchy liquor store. One night, a man came in. It wasn't unusual to have customers come near closing. It was just uncommon to see anyone we didn't already know. Our store was mostly just regulars. He was lanky and probably around 30. I mostly just remember his eyes. They were piercing, the type that never break a stare. I remember initially thinking he was attractive. The way he spoke was short and concise, just ordering a small hot latte. I made his order and that was it. I told my friend about how I thought he was attractive and we then started referring to him as a small hot latte guy. We had this thing where we always call people by their drink orders. He came a bunch of times after that, each time staying a little longer and longer, talking a little more and more. One day he came with a woman, presumably his girlfriend. I remember I felt a little weird, like she was staring at me, or like they had spoken about me beforehand. She glanced over at him and said, "Wow, she's pretty." I didn't think much of it. I just said thank you and served them, and I thought that would be the end of it. He then began showing up and talking to me a lot without her. He started off as being friendly, then he kinda got a little flirty. Initially, I was just flattered, but being underage and immature, I didn't even think about the fact that it was kind of alarming. He began to stay for a while. Sometimes he would bring a laptop or a notebook. I could feel him staring at me, listening to our conversations, but at that point I wasn't getting creep vibes from him, as my coworker and I had dealt with our fair share of creeps. He then somehow got my number. To this day, I honestly don't know how. He texted me and somehow I still wasn't creeped out. We would talk about music a lot, then I began to learn more about him. He was in his late 30s and had prior problems with substance abuse that he never really got into. He went back to school for art and would show me his pieces. He'd also sent a lot of pictures of nature. I thought they were kinda nice. Looking back though, they were actually pretty creepy. For example, a picture of his backyard sent at like 3 a.m. He'd stay and work on his art as well. He then told me he barely enjoyed hot lattes. He just wanted to come see me. He would come in and began giving me gifts. This was the point I finally started realizing that I did not like the situation. He began by just giving little snacks or drinks. I would accept but would never eat or drink them. It wasn't that I necessarily thought he had ill intentions. I just had a hard time accepting gifts. I remember one night he brought me a book about one of his favorite artists. I reluctantly took it, but had tried to decline before. I remember telling him about one of my favorite musicians and sent him a link to a performance I really liked. He started being kind of sexual while still talking about the song. He then began talking super suggestively, and I would laugh it off and decline when he'd ask to send pictures. I began talking less and less and told my friend about the situation. She agreed that it was getting creepy and said I should maybe change my schedule. I'm a pretty stubborn person, so I told her I'd be fine. He'd still come every week at closing time, and he'd even stay in his car till we closed, meaning he'd watch me go to the back to take the trash out. I began making excuses as to why I couldn't talk and began going to the back of the store when I'd see him. He then sent me a bunch of texts about how graceful I looked while working. I didn't respond. He kept texting me and I told him I didn't want to talk anymore. He sent a bunch of messages describing how much I meant to him and how he wouldn't be okay. I started freaking out, so I blocked his number. Still, I returned to work. I honestly thought he'd stop coming, but I was wrong. I felt uneasy the entire shift. My friend said that if he came, to just go to the back and wait it out. I saw his car coming in and my heart sank. I was on the verge of tears and hurried to the back. I could hear them talking, but couldn't decipher what exactly was being said. Then about 10 minutes later, she came to the back. I could visibly see that she was upset. We ended up both just crying and hugging each other. She told me he kept asking to see me and asking how I was, and she just kept refusing. She told him how I was underage and how he made me feel uncomfortable. He wouldn't give up though, but eventually she threatened him and he left. We were both shaken up, but I thought it was over. It was time to take out the trash and lock up, and we both felt okay. I was opening the door while juggling like 3 bags of trash and saw something on the ground. I was confused at first, but then I realized what I saw. It was flowers and a note. I felt sick to my stomach and looked around the parking lot. I didn't see his car. I threw them out immediately and told my friend I didn't want to read the note. She read it and told me I had to. It was something to the effect of,
"I've never felt so connected to someone. You're breaking my heart. Please don't do this. I'm sorry."
Looking back, I honestly didn't lead him on, but initially, I just had felt as if I was in the wrong. Nonetheless, we turned the corner to take the trash out and both prayed the parking lot was empty. It wasn't. Let's just say the trash was not going to get taken out that night. I continued working there and still worked there on my breaks from college. I had different hours after that, and the summer I was going to leave for my freshman year, I saw him again. It was around 3 p.m. It was busy. We made eye contact and he left. That was the last time I saw him. Looking back, I was so naive and could have handled this situation so much better. I am forever thankful to my friend. So yeah, small hot latte guy who forever tainted my love for espresso. Let's not meet again.